I know they say not to judge a book by its cover, but hear me out. What if we not only judged a book by its cover, but we also used the cover as inspiration for our outfits? No? Have I gone too far? That's right, in this video we're going to be reading books with pretty covers, and I'm going to be dressing like those covers. As somebody who reads and wears clothes every day, I feel like this is a video that's just been waiting to happen. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's just get to reading and to styling. So before I head out into the sun and show you this outfit properly, I thought we should sit down and have a little bit of a chat about the first book that I finished reading, When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. I don't even know how to explain it to you. I think it's described as like a dazzling multi-generational epic filled with rivalries, family curses, and love stories within love stories. And I guess I haven't really seen many like intergenerational sagas in the young adult space, and that's definitely what I would describe this as. At the very beginning, we're introduced to a 12-year-old girl. She has two older brothers, and at the beginning of the book, she nearly gets hit by a truck. But just as it's about to happen, this beautiful girl with bright coloured hair kind of sweeps in and saves her and then disappears. And Dizzy's convinced that this is her angel. Anyway, as the book progresses and we learn more about this family, more things happen to them. We learn more about their history. We see this girl, this angel, pop up again and again. So saying all that, like there's a lot here to like. There's also like queer rep here, both in the modern day timeline, but also in the past timelines too, which I always love to see. Like just like the fact that queer folks existed and have existed throughout time, even if we haven't been telling their stories or we've silenced their stories. Did I, as a reader, enjoy this experience? To be fair, I just don't tend to be a big lover of young adult. It's all a bit too angsty, a bit too dramatic for me. And to be perfectly frank with you, I knew from pretty early on that this wasn't going to be like a book for me necessarily. I was reading it for two reasons. One is because we're stocking this copy for Christmas at work, so it's great that I can recommend it. And secondly, is because I just love this cover and I knew it would make a killer outfit for this video. Yes, that is a little vain of me, but speaking of the outfit, let me show you in its full glory. Let's go. I don't know about you, but I feel like I get top marks for this one. I honestly don't know that I could have done any better, even if I'd like gone out and bought something. It's just perfect. Obviously it catches the colours, the vibes, and I just felt like this was the kind of outfit that needed to be witnessed and truly appreciated in the sun, even though it is 34 degrees and I'm literally melting. Obviously we've got the blue of the sky, and I didn't have like a sun necklace or something, but I figured the sparkles could kind of stand in for the sunshine. And then I feel like I must have bought this skirt 2 years ago, like based on a premonition that I had of this cover. It's so perfect. And then I have just tried to bring in the text to complete the cover with our black bag and our white sandals. And I think it's perfect. I think I nailed it. And I'm not taking any notes. I'm not taking any criticisms on this in the comments below. Don't even try. I wonder what we're going to be reading next. I must confess, this next book was an absolute impulse buy, impulse read, and it did take me like a good 4 or 5 days to finish. And even now that I am finished, I'm not entirely sure what I think or how I feel, so this is going to be a weird review. But of course, I was sucked in by the hype of the movie coming out, and I thought it was about time. I read Gregory Maguire's Wicked. Obviously, this is a bit of a classic at this point, so I'm sure it doesn't need too much of an introduction. It's a retelling, a reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, particularly from Elphaba, or the Wicked Witch of the West's perspective. And I suppose I'll start with the things that I liked. I loved the writing. Loved the writing. This is my kind of writing. I loved the darkness. I loved the sense of humour. I loved Elphaba. We have explicit exploration of many different forms of oppression, of genocide, of ethnic cleansing, of fascism. It's rich, it's ambitious, and there's so much here to like. And yet, after having finished it, I don't really feel all that satisfied. My big thing that I just kind of keep getting caught up on is like the fact that this is political allegory. And I can absolutely see some huge parallels between like our time and this book, but I can also see it for the time that Maguire was writing. And while in this book, just as there is in real life, there are lots of different intersections and points of oppression. I suppose the point of oppression that felt most meaningful and significant and urgent, at least in the first parts of the book, was definitely around like the capital A animals, the sentient animals, the animals with souls, which in and of itself is like an interesting distinction, right? As a vegetarian. But anyway, I won't go there. And these are the things that motivate, politically activate, I suppose, Elphaba. And that's such a core part of her story and her journey. I don't know what to make of the fact that that just kind of became an afterthought for the second half of the book, when to me it felt like the core issue of what was happening in Oz. But then again, maybe that's a reflection on Elphaba herself and the fact that she was politically engaged
to begin with, and she had really positive, meaningful values and motivations. And then the further along in the book we got, the more resentful and guilt-ridden and self-centered she became in a lot of ways. But I guess at the end of the day, I'm just not really sure what to make of it. When I read through the 1-star reviews, I totally understand where people are coming from. When I read through the 5-star reviews, I totally understand where people are coming from. And yet I don't feel like that strongly in either direction about this book. But equally, it is making me think an awful lot. And like, I think there's something here that makes me appreciate and respect this book, even if I didn't necessarily fall in love with it. I think one of my favorite things about the whole journey of the book was the power that words have and the way that we as a society frame something. Like, Elphaba didn't ever consider herself a witch. It's not something that she was like, one day I am a witch and I'm going to be a witch and that's who I am. It's definitely something that this world that sees both her skin color but also her character and her conviction and her political beliefs as dangerous. It's this society that labels her a witch. Anyway, with all that out of the way, there is one very important thing for us to do next. And that is, of course, for me to show you the outfit I've come up inspired by this book. And I might be biased, but I kind of think Elphaba would approve. Okay, here we have it. Our Wicked outfit. I love it. I love it. This is an outfit I would and am wearing. Like, on a normal... I'm wearing this today. So, obviously, this is not necessarily like super... It's specifically inspired by the cover. There have been so many covers of this book over the years, and there's so much other content related to The Wizard of Oz and Wicked that I'm sure we all comes to mind when we think of it. And the cover that I have is primarily black, and I did not feel like doing a primarily black outfit. So I have allowed Elphaba and Wicked to inspire me in all my Technicolor. Obviously though, I needed to bring in the green, and green is my favorite color to wear. I have a lot of green in my wardrobe, but I just felt like this bright green was the right choice. I think there's something about it that kind of feels a little questionable, a little toxic, a little uncertain, a little poisonous, like something sinister, just a little bit, that I just felt really worked well with the tone of the book. And then this skirt, I love this skirt. And I don't know what it is, whether it's the combination of the shapes or the colors or maybe a bit of both, that does make this feel like a witchy skirt, just in bright colors. And then I know Elphaba never wears them herself, but like, I had red shoes, so I needed to do red shoes. I think it does really work with this outfit. And like, you can't think about Wizard of Oz and Wicked without thinking of the ruby shoes. And then I've just thrown in my nice black bag, both because it's got the gold strap. I wanted to bring in a bit more gold, and also we needed some black. So that is it. I hope you like my Elphaba outfit as much as I do. And I have no idea what I'm reading next. I'll let you know when I know. So I just need you to know that for this book, I really wanted to show you this outfit and talk about it outdoors. I wanted to find like a nice bushy kind of area just to kind of really bring the right kind of vibes. But I don't know if you can tell either from outside or how big my hair is at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's raining. So we're stuck indoors instead. You're just going to have to use your imagination, which I suppose is fitting for a middle grade book. I finished The Explorer by Katherine Rundell. You might remember that Impossible Creatures by this author was my favourite middle grade of last year. To be honest, nothing has usurped it yet. I haven't found like a new favourite this year. It's just delightful. This was one of her previous books. I've been meaning to read some more of her books given how much I liked Impossible Creatures, and I've heard incredible things about The Explorer. Unlike Impossible Creatures, this is not a fantasy story. It's very much set in real life, even if the events are a little unlikely. Basically, we're following Fred, who is a boy, we don't know how old, and he has always dreamt of being an explorer. He's kind of like obsessed with all the explorers of old. And I think in particular because he feels like his father doesn't really love him or isn't very proud of him, he thinks that becoming a great famous explorer will, make his dad love him more. Anyway, one day he is on a small plane with a couple of other people flying across the Amazon when the plane crashes, doesn't it? I mean, I shouldn't be laughing. This is a very serious matter. The pilot dies, and basically the only people left, like I said, there weren't very many people on the plane, but the only people left are Fred and 3 other kids. And so this is kind of just like a survival story, but like it's very much middle grade. So it does go into like a lot of detail about like them trying to find food, trying to find water, even like figuring out like where they can go to the bathroom, but it's all very fast paced. And then about halfway through the book, it's not a spoiler because it's on the blurb, they start to find some clues that maybe
they're not as alone as they thought. Anyway, I'm very glad to have read this because I will absolutely be hand selling this and recommending this to so many kids. I can see so many children enjoying this. I think especially towards the end, like the emotional and kind of more like moral lessons of the story did start to like have an impact on me. But I was definitely reading this again more because I can hand sell it and because I thought it would make a cute outfit. At least I'm honest, I suppose. And because, like I said, I had been meaning to read more Katherine Rundell. I just really like her writing. And I think the way that she includes moral lessons in children's stories is really well done. It's like, obviously it is moralistic, it's a little didactic, but it doesn't ever feel condescending, which I think is important in children's literature. Anyway, this is another book that has had a handful of covers, but I definitely have been inspired, spoilers, by this cover in particular. And I really like my outfit today. I don't think I ever would have put it together. I mean, maybe. I'm really enjoying being inspired by my covers. It's definitely getting me wearing my clothes in slightly new ways. So let me back you up so you can have a proper look at what we've got going on. Don't mind my stack of books. I was tidying up my bookshelf last night, which it's a video you may or may not have already seen. Here's the outfit. What do you think? I feel like for some people the hat will be too much, but I just felt like for an outdoorsy book, I needed a hat. It felt thematically correct, you know? So I was definitely inspired by like the colors and then obviously like the animals on the cover itself. I wanted to bring in some of those oranges, greens and reds, but also kind of keep it light, which is why I've got plenty of white incorporated. But I also wanted to kind of be inspired by like an outdoorsy kind of feel. Not necessarily cosplaying as an explorer, but like there's elements here that I feel give outdoorsy. It just kind of felt like something an explorer might wear. Probably not. Literally the extent that I know about exploring, I have learnt from this book. So don't trust me. To top it off, this is a very comfortable outfit and I do feel myself in it. So I'm looking forward to spending the day dressed secretly as an explorer. Okay, that's it from me for now. I have an appointment to get to and then some more reading to do. I will talk to you later. So early in the year, I pre-ordered this very lovely hardcover edition of Behind You Is the Sea. And I mean, I know I get a staff discount, but still, like this little itty bitty book in this lovely hardcover was not a cheap thing to order in. And you might recall that I feel like I have a little bit of a curse when I order in nice hardcovers. I tend to not like the book very much. I am so very delighted to let you know that the curse is broken. I loved this book. Now, when I say loved, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's dark in a lot of different ways, and I think it's intentionally confrontational. But firstly, I suppose I should tell you what this book is. It's billed as a novel, but it's more like interconnected short stories centered on a Palestinian-American community, kind of like 3 or 4 central families in Baltimore, and we get like these different chapters or different stories from different members of these families, different characters. And it's not so much building to an overall plot. Instead, we just kind of see how these different people, like how they intersect, how they're very different. And I guess at the end of the day, we see how like each person is a whole world. Like we see the complexities and the intricacies of each of these individual people, and we kind of meet them at a pivotal point in their lives. And so that's why I feel like this leans more towards a collection of interconnected short stories, because each one sort of does feel like it could stand on its own. And it just so happens that the more we read, the more like names and characters that we kind of see overlapping from story to story. And so obviously that's just giving us a richer picture, not only of these individuals, but of this community as a whole. Like I said, though, this is not all sunshine and roses. There's some really uncomfortable things that this book tackles. And I like, there were definitely moments where I was like, do I hate this book? Is this book offensive? Do you know, like I've seen reviews where people talk about a whole host of things and like, I kind of agree. But also, this is just my reading of it, but it feels like it was done very intentionally by the author. I won't go too much into it, but basically, especially in the first few stories, this book does kind of lean into a whole host of really negative stereotypes about Palestinians, Arabs, and in particular, like Arab men. And I'm going to try and be as honest as I can without giving anything away, without like invalidating other people's readings of it. But there's one story in particular that I just sort of feel like is the kind of story that if a low-key or high-key racist person were to read, they would use it as like justification for their already held biases. And so I definitely understand why this book makes a lot of people uncomfortable. My reading of this book though, and I think why I love it as much as I do, is that it sort of felt like the book started by leaning into some stereotypes. I think one, because often, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but often there is some kind of nugget of truth within a lot of stereotypes, which is why they can be so harmful, because they're reductive, because they're not the whole truth. So it kind of felt like, to me, the author was like leaning into some of those stereotypes and some of the worst kind of stereotypes that people might hold of Palestinians, and in particular Palestinian men. And for some of those stereotypes, it kind of humanized the person behind the stereotype, or the person kind of being caught in that stereotype. For other stereotypes, it made it very clear that, like, yes, maybe like one or two people in the community might behave that way, but most people in the community are absolutely disgusted by that behavior. Essentially, communities are not a monolith, right? And the worst behavior within a community does not define that community. And so from that starting point of kind of making us really uncomfortably sit with and look at these stereotypes in a different way, the book, as it progresses, then kind of gets further and further away from those kinds of stereotypes. Essentially, each one of these characters that we get to spend, like, you know, the whole of 20 pages with, they felt like such lived in, real characters. And it felt like, yeah, we got to spend 20 pages of getting a snapshot of them in one moment of their life, often a defining moment, so them at kind of their best or their worst. But all the details that were just kind of hinted at and sprinkled through these chapters made it so clear, like, how rich these characterizations were, that you just felt like they must exist somewhere off the page too. I don't know, it was just humanizing. It was so human and humanizing. And to top it all off, it was just beautifully written. I literally laughed out loud. I literally cried multiple times throughout this book. I just loved it. I really did. Like I said, elements of this made me so uncomfortable for so many different reasons. And yet there's so much tenderness and diversity within this collection that I think it works. At least for me, it worked really, really well. I just loved it. And something else I love about this book is this cover. I just think it's beautiful. There's just something so simple and striking about this. And actually, we do have a little note from the cover designer in the back, which I love, especially in the context of this video. The cover designer is Alicia Tatone or Tatoni. And they talk about how, like, reading this story, they were trying to kind of come up with motifs or images from each story that might make the cover, but it just felt wrong to capture one person or one story when this book is so much greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing. And so instead, they decided to be inspired by the setting, Baltimore. Some of the characters immigrated to the city and some were born there, but for all of them, it's now home. An emblematic row house, typical of Baltimore architecture, felt like a fitting representation of this idea of home. The building stands slightly askew, since even in the happiest homes, things are never perfect, with flowers inexplicably growing out of the top. The visuals of flowers growing through a crack in the concrete, constantly striving and reaching for the sun, even in tenuous conditions, is a common sight if you live in a city, but it never fails to move me. How beautiful is that? I mean, I already loved the cover, but like reading that, the intention behind it, and I think it does such a great job of capturing the book. And so obviously that leads us on to our outfit for today. Okay, here we go. So there were two things that really stood out to me with this cover, with how much I liked it. The first was just the color palette. To me, it was a little bit unusual, but very striking, very pretty. And then second was just kind of like the beautiful simplicity of the image. It's quite striking, it's quite geometric. So I've tried to bring all of that into this outfit. I pretty much only have one item of clothing that's kind of like this, like tealy kind of color. So obviously I had to start with these incredible pants. I love them so much. I decided to go for the red on top, just because like the red and this green, like this tealy light kind of green, was what was so striking, I think, about the color choice on the cover. And so I didn't want to chicken out of that color palette by just, you know, throwing in a little red bag with the rest being black, you know. Obviously, I still have brought in the black with the bag and the shoes. And now I did contemplate bringing in this hat that we wore yesterday. I think it kind of works. Oh, excuse me, hang on. I think it does work. I think it works really well with the color palette, and then also it kind of brings in the flowers sprouting from the top in a way. But I am going to work, and also, I don't know, I feel like this is just very busy. It just kind of took away from that simplicity that I liked so much. So instead I just opted for a bow in my hair, a black bow. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of standing in for the flowers. And then I did feel like this outfit needed like an accessory of some kind. And I remembered that one of you sent me this bracelet. I don't know if I'll be able to show it very well, but it's a Palestinian bracelet. It's just like a black cord with Arabic. And then, I can't even show you properly. But anyway, it was a beautiful gift that one of you sent me. Thank you so much. And obviously it just felt appropriate to represent Palestine in a more explicit way in my outfit as well. But genuinely, this is not an outfit that I would have thought to put together, and I think it results in something quite striking, much like the cover, although not quite as artistic and not as pretty. Let me know what you think. So I'm all dressed up in my best Glinda garb because I have some more thoughts on Wicked that I felt like I needed to insert now that I've had a few extra days to mull my thoughts over. I think the big conclusion I've come to is that essentially I love a lot about this book, but in so many ways, I love it more in theory than I do in practice. I think the project of humanizing and learning more about a character that was so one-dimensional, great, I love that. And I love the way that Gregory Maguire kind of took the time to try and explore so many different themes through that lens. I think one of the reasons that this does feel like a little bit of a swing and a miss for me in particular is how many time jumps there are and just how big those time jumps are, and also like how much character development happens in those time jumps that we don't get to see, especially when the project of the book is literally us seeing how the Wicked Witch of the West became evil. When we miss so much of those kind of really important moments for her, and instead we just kind of catch her at different points in her life. And yeah, there's absolutely character development that we do see on page, but I feel like so much of it and so many of like the really pivotal moments happen off page, and then we just catch up with her a few years later and see who she's become. We don't actually see that change happen, which is kind of weird given the fact that that's kind of what I thought the whole point of the book was in so many ways, you know? I think the other thing that I kind of alluded to earlier, but I don't know that I explained as well as I could have, is that it just felt like the first half of this book I thought was incredible. And it felt like we were juggling so many different themes and concepts, all within the overarching kind of project that just added so much nuance and complexity. And by the second half of the book, it kind of felt like we dropped about half of those balls and we never really came back to them. And at least to me, the balls that we dropped were some of the most interesting, the ones that I was most invested in. And I understand that having said all that, this is already a very long book, and basically I just wanted more. I wanted more, but I didn't necessarily want a longer book. So I don't know, make of that what you will. At the end of the day, I do still kind of feel quite conflicted about this book. I think it's one of those situations where I can see a world in which this was my favorite book of all time, and yet it's not. It's just so far from it. And so I'm just left feeling really quite like frustrated and disappointed at what could have been, That is not to say that this is not great, that it's not interesting, that it's not powerful, that it's not compelling. It is all of those things. I feel like it could have been even more. What I will say though, is that I did love how queer this book is. Oh my God. Why did nobody tell me that this is queer as fuck? I mean, there is so much queer subtext. There is also some like explicit queerness too. But like, is Glinda gay? Is Glinda gay for Elphaba? Like, I don't know if it goes both ways. I don't know if Elphaba sees Glinda that way, but 100% Glinda is in love with Elphaba, right? Please tell me that's canon, because like I'm convinced. Anyway, I do kind of feel like this is a book that I could talk about forever. I sort of wish I'd done a big book challenge for this one, but I feel like that probably would have been over an hour long, because there's so much here. There's so much here to like, there's so much here to think about, there's so much here to dislike and to think about. And I don't know, while I don't think I could ever describe this as a book that I love, I couldn't describe it as a favorite. It sort of reminds me of like how I felt reading Babel, right? Like I didn't love that book, but I loved what it was doing. I loved thinking about it. I loved talking about it. This is one of those books for me. And honestly, those books end up like kind of sitting higher in my estimation than a book that I just kind of like vaguely liked, you know? This is a book that I'll remember, that I will keep thinking about, and that I will probably reread at some point. Anyway, I feel like that is enough Wicked chat for now. We have, I feel like, had a great time in this video. I mean, we read 4 books with 4 beautiful covers that inspired 4 very fun outfits. This is a video concept that I have had on my wish list to make for a very long time, and I feel like it's one that I would like to return to. So I would love to hear both what your favorite outfit was in the comments below, but also if you have any feedback regarding like the format of this video. Already reflecting on this video, I feel like there's one thing that I neglected to do, which is talk about the cover artist, at least for most of these books. So let's very quickly rectify that. For the Explorers, the cover illustration is done by Hannah Horn. For When the World Tips Over, the cover designer was Teresa Evangelista. And then for Wicked, the cover design was by Jen Tierney, and the cover witch illustration was by Gregory Maguire. That's kind of fun. But with that, I think we've finally reached the end. Thank you so much for spending this week with me. I had so much fun. I hope you did too. A big thank you goes to my lovely patrons over on Patreon. A big extra special thank you goes to Olivia, Lynette Brown, and Marie. And thanks for watching all the way to the end. I will see you next week with another video. Until then, happy reading. Bye!